I think with working with kids, the imposter can come out because you quite often will have a parent in the room. I mean, obviously the parent is going to know the child better than you do. And so I think that we can sometimes get a little bit scared and we forget that that connection that we can have with the parent is really powerful. I always tell my practitioners, use the parent as your ally, which of course makes sense, but really go and talk to them and don't feel like an imposter because they're older than you or they've got kids and you don't have kids. So I think it's talking to them, knowing their name, using their name and connecting with them, because I think that's really powerful in making you feel comfortable and them feel comfortable. We are child development obsessed business besties and mums, and we're here to spill all our secrets.
We have a combined 30 years experience working with children, and each episode we will bring you up-to-date research and evidence-based strategies to set your children up to thrive.
I'm Lizzie Dawson, Australian exercise physiologist.
I'm Emily Mackey, Australian speech pathologist.
And this is the Move, Talk, Thrive podcast. So today, Emily and I are going to talk about imposter syndrome. I think everyone knows or has heard of imposter syndrome. So we are going to unpack that today and talk about our 6 tips in managing the beast that is imposter syndrome.
As everyone else describes it, as a beast. It's like people say it's crippling. It's the biggest question that I get when people join my online Facebook group for Emily Mackey's speech. If they send me DMs on Instagram, it's when we're interviewing new grads or even going to unis, the biggest question is, how do I get over imposter syndrome?
Yeah.
And when we started, when I was a new grad, so I've been around for 15 years as a speechy.
Same. Did you graduate 2009?
Yeah.
Oh, me too.
Oh, there you go. We're learning new things about each other in our podcast. Was it 2009? Yeah.
Yeah.
Imposter syndrome, the word didn't exist.
No.
So I don't actually know when imposter syndrome became a phrase.
No. It's such a buzzword.
But
now.
it is relatively
Everywhere.
new
for
us, because I think we all experience the same feelings, but we would never have coined it that way. I don't think we really have words for it.
Well, there wasn't like a name for it. And I feel like now that there's a name for it, we can kind of talk about it more freely, because you're not saying, oh, I'm feeling really anxious to work with a new client, or I'm feeling a bit uncomfortable with marketing. You just wouldn't do it. You just kind of held yourself back. But now I feel like it's kind of opened the conversation up, because you can go, oh, I'm feeling a little bit of imposter syndrome. And people know that, you're feeling a bunch of different feelings and that it's going to be impacting you and holding you back. And we can manage it a little bit better. I think it's just kind of opened the conversation up. I know that everyone's saying it.
But that's why it's opened the conversation, because everyone's saying it, and you can put a name to a whole collection of feelings and state, because it's not even feelings, it's like your state of mind, maybe,
Thoughts.
And your skills, your emotions. You can sort of package it all up into one little nice phrase, which goes on socials quite well.
Yeah, that's right. Absolutely. Well, it's easy to market, isn't it?
Yes.
But I think it's just taken that vulnerability away.
Well, it can, but what would you say imposter syndrome is? Like, if we're actually, because you're saying like it's taken the vulnerability away because now we've got a label on it. But
or maybe it's allowing you to be more vulnerable.
Well, I don't know though, because it is such an easy phrase to say, like, I've got imposter syndrome. But when you actually break it down, so when you're in it, when you're saying that, you're basically identifying with you're feeling like an imposter for many different reasons. So it could be like that you feel like
it could be different to everyone, right?
Exactly. So that's why I'm like, it's actually masking potentially being a little bit more vulnerable and naming what your feelings are.
And then being able to move through it and manage it.
Because it's only when you can identify what the feeling is that you can then actually work on overcoming that.
Yeah.
If you're just sitting in that state of overwhelm and going, I've got imposter syndrome, it's great that we've got a name for it. It's great you can identify it. But then in that same time, it's like, so how do you work on that? And that's the question that everyone says, what do I do? Because it's just such an encompassing term.
Yeah.
And so basically, you know, it is when you feel out of your comfort zone.
Yeah.
It's about growth and development. So it is, if you look at it and look at the feelings, it's because you're learning. So it is a positive thing.
Yeah.
It is normal.
Like, flip
it is normal.
the perspective. But if you can flip that perspective and go, excellent, that means that you are kind of moving, you're growing and you're learning and you're going to move to the next level. So I know now when I feel, so for me, and it will be different for everyone, I think, but for me, I feel like a bit of a fraud. I feel like I don't actually know enough to be doing a podcast, for example. I don't know enough to be presenting at a conference. And I'm like, oh my gosh, do I actually know this? Should I be doing this? Maybe I should just take a step back and let somebody else that knows what they're doing do this. So,
but I think that's good because you don't want to be too high and mighty, like because you're still in that stage of learning. Yeah. It's like you need to have a bit of
humbles you, right?
Because otherwise then you go too big for your shoes.
Yeah.
So to speak.
Yeah. So
I think that's what keeps you getting those opportunities to speak and being successful is because you're in that positioning of learning. But what you're trying to say is that you don't let that imposter syndrome and those feelings that hold you back and stop you from getting on stage.
They don't stop me. It definitely impacts me. Like we've spoken about my presentation at the ESSA conference, I still feel uncomfortable about it.
It was amazing. You got up and spoke to a room of how many professionals?
I don't even know. I don't know.
You blanked it all out.
It was,
Jesus, it was dramatic, but it was amazing.
And, you know, I'm actually quite comfortable talking in front of a group of people, but I think that was, you know, my personal story and for whatever. But I think it was the size of it. And it was like, oh, I'm speaking at a conference of my peers.
It's a pretty big thing to do.
Yeah.
It would make I feel nervous.
Yeah.
But it doesn't, those feelings don't stop you from doing that.
No.
Yeah, you might feel nervous and anxious, which is normal, completely normal.
Yeah. Well, and that's what, you know, that's what gets you into gear, right? Like it actually plays a part in like, doesn't your brain, like it releases a whole bunch of chemicals and your brain actually functions better when you've got adrenaline and it stops you from getting sick.
Not great to do that long term, but yes.
No.
In the
but
moment.
For those moments, it's like they talk about it in sport, like before a race. And so it dilates your blood vessels and, you know, like it's actually the physiological response is there for its purpose. But so it's, I guess, I think it's important to not live in that all the time and to see it as an opportunity to look how far you've come and to know that you're growing and to continue to grow. So when you're being faced with an opportunity that you might feel a bit imposter syndrome about, you know, you're going to research what you need to do to prepare yourself to perform, you know? So I think it actually helps you reach that next level. It forces you to grow and learn a little bit more.
As long as you embrace it and you don't let it stop you.
Yeah.
But to be honest, because you had that feeling when you were getting up on stage, you'd never gotten up on stage before in that capacity.
Yeah.
Our new grads or students are saying, you know, I have imposter syndrome because they're making that transition from uni into the workplace or the workforce. Often it's your first full-time job because you've been studying. If you're mature age, it's your first time going into your professional capacity.
Yeah.
So of course you're going to be feeling that because like it's new. So it's something that you then can keep experiencing over time because if you keep doing new things, so whether that's going from a student to being a speechie or an EP, or whether it's then administering a new assessment or seeing a new type of client, you're going to always experience those feelings because you're being pushed out of your comfort zone. So it is completely normal. Like you're saying, it's a physiological response.
Yes.
And I think that's the thing is everybody has got it
in some form.
And so then it's like, okay, it's not just me. There is nothing wrong with me for feeling like this. And it's going, okay, if everyone's got this, we can all work through this. Like even you and I, so we've then gone on to do lots of different things. So I often look at people ahead of me and go, well, if they can do it, I can do it.
Exactly.
When I was at uni, being like studying, the last year of the speechy degree is so intense. And I remember half of my grade dropped out because it was so intense.
Oh, wow.
And I just thought, well, if there's thousands of speeches. If they've graduated and they can do it, I can do it.
Yeah.
You know, and it's sort of like using that and looking forward to other people.
Yeah.
But essentially, I think it's looking beyond that phrase. Looking beyond, like, it could be a little bit of a mask, the word imposter syndrome, and actually sitting with your feelings and identifying the feelings is one of the keys.
Yeah.
Yes, having that self-awareness.
Is the first step. Yeah.
Yes. And going, what am I feeling? Putting a name to that feeling, not just the general tag, and being curious about why you feel that way, and not being threatened by the emotion, and not thinking that this emotion makes you less of a person or less as a professional in your capacity, and going, this is normal because I'm a human, I feel.
Yeah. And you are not your thoughts.
Absolutely.
That's something my sister said to me a long time ago because I've experienced a lot of anxiety in my life. And she's like, it's okay. You're not your thoughts. So everyone has some, unhelpful thought patterns. And it can become habitual. So I think recognizing those unhelpful thoughts and then, naming them or naming the feelings and almost disassociating. So that is not me
controlling you or overpowering you.
Yeah.
And it is therapeutic. I mean, that's why therapy exists, right? When you name a feeling and you talk about it.
Yeah.
And our boxes have been therapeutic.
Yep.
You then feel a bit like more relaxed, or you're like, wow, like that I was holding that all inside.
Yeah.
That feeling or that emotion, I've talked about it. Oh, like you even feel your body relax.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like when you have to have a difficult conversation with someone and you're nervous about it, and then you have it and you're like, oh my God, why didn't I just do that?
You're like all tense. You're like,
yeah.
I saw this post on Instagram the other day, and it was like, relax your shoulder. Like the post was written and it was like, relax your shoulders, relax your tongue, like take your tongue off the roof of your mouth. And I was like, that's what I was doing. Like you're just in this constant state of tension. And it's like just being aware, okay, relax your shoulders, relax your back, relax your mouth.
Breath.
I hold a lot of tension in my mouth.
Yeah.
And it's like, you just got to relax. It's just the thought. And then you just go,
yeah.
And you just release your body.
Yeah, that's right. And I heard a really good podcast once with a Holocaust survivor, and she said that when you keep your thoughts inside, it's depression. When you speak about it, it's expression.
Oh, I love that. Yeah. That is so cool.
Hey?
Yes.
And I think that's, that's why talking is therapeutic.
I was going to say that's why being a speechy is so important, because we have to communicate.
That's right.
And with children, that can sometimes impact their behavior because they feel so frustrated on the inside. Like, what I always say to my speechies is, yes, you're dealing with a child, but they're also a human and they're a person.
Yes.
Think about how an adult would respond. Think about how you respond. Try to have that empathy and that theory of mind where you sort of are looking at the child, get into their mind, and then sort of you can get some practical strategies from there.
Yeah.
It's like,
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Because I think if we're experiencing discomfort, imagine we've been children. We know. We know. So we can't minimize them because they're small.
No.
Like they've got big feelings. And I always say to my practitioners and mentees that behavior is an outcome of some underlying difficulties.
Yeah.
So let's not label children as their behavior. Let's try and understand where that's coming from, because, more often than not, it might be because they're hypersensitive and they're in a really loud room and we need to change the environment. So there's some really powerful ways to set children up around that success. Yeah.
Just coming back to those thoughts, how we said with imposter syndrome, you sort of have the thoughts. You really then are looking at your self-talk as well. And so if you're having those feelings, it's then, if you can actually label it and identify it, you can actually have a bit of control over your self-talk, which is very powerful.
Yes.
The way you talk to yourself.
Yes.
Really, I don't know how else to say it apart from it's so powerful.
Yeah. Yeah.
But so if you're in those moments of having those feelings in imposter syndrome come up, one of the strategies is that you actually have that awareness.
Yeah.
And then you can self change the way that you're talking to yourself, because you actually make it worse if you have the feeling and then you then just keep beating yourself up or having that
judge
negative
yourself.
Yes, judging yourself, having that negative self-talk.
Yeah.
So it's being aware of that, which again, it's just labeling the emotion that helps that process happen.
Yeah. Do you know what I do when I find myself in this like negative loop of self-talk? And I find that I get it when I can't sleep at night. I was actually doing it last night. I talk to myself like I'm talking to my kids. And I'm like, it's okay. I love you. It's okay.
Yeah.
And sometimes sounds really weird, but sometimes I even pat myself just because it really soothes me. But why are we not talking to ourselves like we talk to our children?
Well,
that sounds weird.
But that's why it's so important for children when they're growing up that you are reflecting what their self-talk becomes.
Yes.
And so
100%.
If you're talking to your children like that, you know that that's helpful for you as an adult. So of course that's what we have to model to our children, because that's how they will then talk to themselves.
Yes.
Again, no one's perfect. No one has perfect parents.
No.
We can attest that people lose
and
it.
you're going to lose your cool all the time. Our kids are hard.
But when your children come into therapy, it's really important to look at that relationship with the parents, because sometimes you might need to unpack that a little bit with your child, particularly if they're older, to then create that safety and security with them before you start learning and jumping into the goals, because they need their emotions and thoughts to be aligned.
Yeah.
That positive self-talk to be able to overcome. That's a clinical element of it.
That's right.
But, as a professional ourselves, coming back to, having those feelings, labeling them, sitting with them, and then having a few more practical strategies. Do you want to talk about the practical strategies?
Yeah. So I think with working with kids, the imposter can come out because you quite often will have a parent in the room, and it becomes a little bit, I don't know, obviously the parent is going to know the child better than you do. And so I think that we can sometimes get a little bit scared, and we forget that connection that we can have with the parent is really powerful. So I always tell my practitioners, use the parent as your ally, which of course makes sense, but really go and talk to them and don't feel like an imposter because they're older than you or they've got kids and you don't have kids, because that's quite often the case.
With new grads,
Yeah. So I think it's talking to them, knowing their name, using their name, and connecting with them, because I think that's really powerful in making you feel comfortable and them feel comfortable, which is going to help with that imposter in that particular situation.
I actually did that when I was a new grad, not knowing that was what I was doing. Like now I look back and go, oh, that was an actual practical strategy that I did, was because I felt sometimes like the parents might be testing me. Because I was I don't know whether they knew I was a new grad. I actually don't even know. Yeah. But I thought, oh, they're just here to see if I'm going to do the right job, if I can actually help their child. Probably a lot of that was my own projection. I don't think any of my parents actually put that on me, but that is the process that we go through.
Yeah.
And so for me to feel comfortable, I actually made sure that I addressed every parent by their name. Yeah. I learnt their name, and that's hard because I'm actually not very good with names.
Aren't you? It's my superpower.
I struggle with names. I know people, and that it's really bad when you run into clients that you saw 10 years ago on the street, and I'm like, I know who you are. Yeah. It's going to give me a couple of minutes for your name to come to me. And then when it comes to me, it's fine. Yeah. I think I just have too much information in my brain.
You're thinking about too much.
But for me, I was very aware that I would, if I didn't make a note to remember their name, I probably wouldn't. Yeah. And for me, that felt like not a genuine connection.
Yes.
Because with people, you like to call them by their name. A name is very important. So what I did was I would write, that was when, back in the day, I would write all my plans out. All my girls now do it on electronics, but I would write it out. I would highlight the parent's name, and then I would look at them, and I would make sure when I go into the waiting room, I would say, hi, Laura, how are you today? And then I would say to the kid, hi, Johnny, how are you today? And honestly, parents were like, oh, oh, good, thank you. How are you, Emily? Yeah. And that already there was a very simple key to establishing that relationship. Yeah. And with parents that were hard to crack, they sort of weren't giving me a lot of information. They would sort of sit there watching me in the sessions and sort of, if I said, how was your weekend? They'd say, good. But I found that those parents over time, by knowing their name, I felt more comfortable. So I just sort of asked them more relational questions, and we just sort of build that relationship over time, because I feel like they felt like I knew them because I knew their name.
Yeah.
And you would probably experience it yourself. If someone comes in and they don't know your name and they're like, oh, hey, how are you, lovely? Or how are you?
Know, don't you?
You don't feel known. And so then you think, oh, you don't really care about me because you don't know me, because you don't even know my name.
Yeah.
And
I say this about kids. We have to know all their names. And so in my business, we go into childcare centres and kindergartens. We need to know
There's a lot of names
their
there.
names. And I always say to them in the first few classes, it's going to take me a little while to remember all your names. So I'm going to go around and get your names, and I use their name over and over and over and over, because I'm not sitting at a computer. So I'll just use their name like at least 5 times, and I'll pick like 4 kids each week to learn their name. But we also need to connect with the educators, because a really important point in child engagement is engaging their parents or their educators or their caregivers, whoever's there. They need to be engaged, because how they talk about whatever therapy that you're providing to their children is going to impact that engagement. So I think the connection is king across the board with educators, parents, caregivers, and kids. So, and knowing their name is like first step, right?
Yeah, that's a really practical step. They're the key influencers. They're the people that are going to be doing the practice with them after, or the homework, or reporting to you how the child went that week, so that you know what your clinical plan can be.
Yeah.
You should be doing.
Yeah.
But that's basically the opposite of fraud. You feel seen.
Yeah.
When you feel like a fraud, it's because you're like, I don't feel seen. I don't know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Yeah, you feel seen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's right.
Something else that has helped me, I think we actually talked about this in one of our
last episode.
Yeah. But we talked about our why and our mission.
Yeah.
And so that has to be bigger or better than your fear.
Yeah.
And
it is when you think about it, right? Like when you really land on that purpose,
it
is. Like you just have to go, wait a second, 1 in 4 children, or 1 in 5 children are starting school developmentally vulnerable. That is my son starting school developmentally vulnerable, and that makes me want to cry.
Yeah.
Children born in the decade of 2023 have a life expectancy 5 years shorter than that of their parents. That makes me want to cry.
That is like mind-blowing.
So I don't care how I feel, how I look, if I look like a fraud, if I look silly. I need to get out there and work my magic with what I know, because I know I've got an opportunity to make a change.
Yeah, that problem is bigger than your nerves.
Yeah.
That problem is bigger than whatever discomfort or uncomfort, how uncomfortable you feel.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, and that comes back to service, having that, like we were speaking about, having that posturing of yourself and your attitude and your mind and your heart of how you help others, how you serve.
Yeah.
And that others focused.
Yeah.
Being others focused.
Yeah, external to you.
Yes.
Outside of you, it's bigger than you.
Yeah. I think that can come more naturally to us as health professionals, because we naturally went into helping people as health professionals. But
every single
you have to be
person
intentional about how you think.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think every single health professional I talk to, I ask, why did you get into this industry? And they're like, because I want to help people. And I think we need to go deeper than that. But do you find, like you're saying, that your new grads or your applicants are coming to you on imposter syndrome, or your mentees are coming to you on imposter syndrome, is one of those big things. Do they struggle with their why?
Probably.
Yeah.
It's hard to know with the mentees. I mean, it's sometimes hard to know whether they're struggling with it or whether they've just not even considered it or given the thought to it or had the opportunity to sort of unpack it. I never was given that opportunity.
No.
I was never encouraged,
not until you had
coached
business.
or encouraged to do that until I had a business. And when things got hard, I don't want to throw in the towel.
Yeah.
And then it's like, hang on, do we actually throw in the towel or do we keep going?
Yeah.
Why am I doing this? Yeah. And it's really your why generally comes about in those really hard periods. But it's not just like a little hard. It's when you're pushed to your absolute limit that you then you are forced to find your why. Otherwise you throw in the towel because you're like, this is not worth it.
Yeah.
But if you're not sort of pushed to that level of discomfort, you probably don't really experience that to a deeper level. Like, a lot of people then say, I wanted to get into be a speech therapist because my sister had, has a disability. And so I saw the speech therapist working with them. For me, my neighbor had issues. And so then I would go with them to their speech therapy sessions and I would watch Deanna. That was shout out to Deanna. And I would watch her when I was in high school doing therapy, and then she'd give me the homework to do with him at home. So, someone often has a personal experience like that, but your why is bigger. It has to be deeper and bigger than that.
Yeah.
And so I think knowing your why helps you overcome the imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
Helps you have purpose and intentionality with your direction of your career.
Yeah.
But it also then helps you stay in the field long term.
Yeah.
Because you can't, you can be a speechy for a very, very, very long time.
Yeah.
And are you going to stay a speechy or are you going to change fields?
Yeah, that's right.
I mean, that's a general principle for anybody in whatever field you're in.
But I think it's also that, driving force behind growing. Yeah. Like it's going to the next step. So it's not just about being in a career or an industry or profession and staying in it. It's about being in that profession and going beyond your limits and striving to do more. And that's what drives it, your why.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because otherwise you'll just be like, oh yeah, I'm helping people. I'm doing well.
Everyone says they're helping people. That's no different.
And you are.
But it's not powerful enough to get you through.
I don't think so. I don't think that's going to get you up at 4:00 in the morning to get your hair and makeup done to go get a podcast, to go film your podcast.
Which when you're really scared. By the way,
we did.
Yes. Another thing. Well, I guess this is within what we've been saying, is that knowing that one person. So often, and this I think can be a big thing with socials.
Yeah.
You go, I've got to help everybody and it's too big and it's too overwhelming.
Yeah.
And it's creating that ideal person for yourself.
Yeah.
Like we do that a lot in business. So to understand marketing and to understand our clients and just give a really good service, we understand like what our actual ideal parent or child or client would be.
Yeah.
What are their wants, their needs, and how do we help them?
Yeah.
But really, it's bringing it back to that one person.
Yeah.
And so getting on a stage, it's like if all I've helped is one person by getting up on that stage, it makes it less overwhelming.
Yeah.
Which you did help one person on that stage.
I did. I did. Surely.
Yes, of course. But it's like looking at that one person. Yes, you might help 5, 10, hundreds of people.
Yeah.
But I would always think that when I launched the Successful Speechy Academy and put out my PLA, the Preschool Language Accelerator, that was in COVID. I was doing masterclasses.
Yeah.
And to combat that feeling of I never know enough, should I really be doing this? Should it, at that time I had a newborn baby. Is this worth it? And it's like if just one other person in the world could benefit from this instruction and then help their child in therapy, that is what makes it worth it, because you're multiplying your skills and helping that way with the children.
Do you know what you should do if you've got imposter syndrome? You should send out a feedback form to anyone that you're working with or mentees, because yes, sometimes you're not going to get great feedback, but when I get feedback back from my course members, I literally cry.
Yeah.
Like some of the feedback is so amazing. And I've got a handful that aren't, and I'm like, oh, okay.
You can't please everyone. That's another rule in life. You can't please everyone. And if you're never getting constructive or critical feedback, everyone's thinking it but not saying it. I'd rather them say it to my face.
And also, if you don't get negative feedback, you're not going big enough because you're not reaching enough people.
I know, you're too much in your comfort zone.
Yes,
we have learned this the hard way. We're speaking from experience.
Yeah. But I think, getting that feedback is really powerful in going, yes, okay, I'm on the right track, keep going. And then sometimes it's hard to ask for it.
When you have those thoughts, then you remember, no, this is what this person said. So it can be helpful to write them down, stick them on your wall, have it somewhere you can easily access, because your memory can fail you in those moments.
Yeah, screenshot all mine.
Yeah, you have to, because you have to then, that's the self-talk that you then use if you don't believe it yourself or you're struggling with that. Then you go, this person said this. So that I'm going to keep going for that one person, that gave you the feedback.
Yeah.
And
makes it a lot. It just feels lighter, doesn't it? That feels really nice.
Yeah. That's how you change that self-talk. It's like coaching yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. And being like driven by what's already happening. Yeah. Like it's already happening. Just keep taking one more step.
It's one step at a time, right? You're not thinking too far ahead. It's good to have vision generally, but you're just taking the next step.
Yeah.
You're not being asked to conquer the world. You're just taking that one step towards positive change.
Yeah. And I think that when you look at the feedback or you think about that one person, it leads us to our next strategy, which is going, it's bigger than you. It's not about you. And one example that I always talk about and we've talked about before is the gym. Like when I've got clients and I'm like, oh, we've got to go do some strength, and I send them to the gym. The feedback that I would get, and this is with adults, I would get, oh, I don't want to go to the gym. Everyone will look at me. And I'm like, no. Everyone is worried about everyone looking at them. Everyone is worried about themselves. So it's not about you. Like everyone's in the same, everyone's kind of feeling
the same way. It's like that phrase, dance like no one is watching, because nobody is. Everyone's too busy looking at their phones or looking at themselves.
Yeah. Everyone's worried about themselves and what they look like. So I think we've just.
So true.
Yeah.
That's so true. Because the gym is a really good example like that. It can be really intimidating when you walk in and there's lots of people exercising.
Yeah.
Particularly like me, being a speechy, you walk in, you go, how do I use this piece of equipment?
Dude, even me. Right? I walk in, I'm like, oh my gosh, there's so many people here. And I'm an exercise physiologist.
See, you experience it, I experience it.
Yeah.
And pretty much everyone else is experiencing it.
Yeah.
So it's not focusing on yourself. Even that parent sitting in your therapy session, they're probably worried about their child's performance with you.
Yeah.
Rather than testing you.
Yeah.
But that's what you think they're doing.
Absolutely. Like as a parent that's been in therapy, you are anxious about your child and what's happening with them.
They're not even looking at the professional. There you go, new grads. From two mums who have been in sessions, you're not even looking at the professional.
Yeah, you are worried about yourself and your child and if it's going to be okay.
Yeah. And if your child's going to be happy and if they're going to love it.
Yeah.
And so then again, bringing it back to the new grad, focus on the child.
Yeah.
Because that will get you the best result.
Yeah.
Focus on that relationship
Connection
building.
is king.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Connecting with
So
them.
those 6 strategies were sit with your feelings, managing your self-talk and tracking your self-talk, connection.
Having the practical strategy of knowing their names.
Yeah, that connection piece. Connecting to your why as well, your mission, making it bigger than your fear. And I talked about those stats which really drive me. And then bringing it back to that one person so that you can connect to that and know that you're impacting and knowing that we're all in the same boat. Yeah. Just think about the gym example. Go to the gym. No one's looking at you. It's okay.
Yeah.
They're worried about themselves.
And so if you're going into a new workplace or if you're going into a new job, remember these strategies, come back to this podcast, listen to this as a little hype for you, and then develop some practical strategies for yourself. And if you are listening to this and you have other strategies that have worked for you, we would love to hear what they are. Send us a DM on our Instagram pages or leave a review below, because again, we're all about collaboration and we would love to hear what has worked for you. And then if we can share that with other listeners, we'd love that. It's how we all work together.